What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Tierfin Crafts. Okay, so it is a wonderful Friday night. As you can see in front of you, a less than pristine table with a sheet of paper on top of a sheet of paper that houses a map that we had started a couple days ago for the fantasy world that I am working on called Volmire. Or the continent that I'm working on is called Volmire. Thank you. Jeez. The continent itself is one of four continents across the whole of this planet. This larger section up here, and a big chunk here, there around, is all the Kingdom of Tyrwin. Down here is not. But while working on this over on my Twitch stream, I had stumbled across a thing that I had decided I wanted to talk about. And so, in order to talk about it, decided I was going to pop over here to Facebook. And once we start getting some people in, I will be starting that chain of talking points. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share this, and whenever you come in and hop in, then we can start chit-chatting a lot more. And I believe most of these people are here. Okay, so what we had started off with was working on building this map, but ended up going from building a map to going over different aspects to world building that I personally have been working on with our friend Sam off and on for a while now. One of the things that we were working on was, let me erase this real quick, was city building, and more designing cities over anything else. One of the things that I've been doing anyway for a novel that I've been working on is figuring out exactly where I want what cities belong where, instead of building out the entire planet for my novel. I've been working piece by piece, building out country at a time or continent at a time. And that's part of what I'm doing here, is instead of doing it small scale, working my way out, I've decided I'm going to start with the overall continent and work my way in, because I know, as far as for the idea that I had, the vast majority of this continent, which will likely end up diminishing in overall size as far as one-to-one mass. Because the more I think about it and the more I process it, 10 million square miles, quite a chunk of land space, and it's going to be even more that I have to cover when it comes to designing and building different aspects of the world itself. So I'm likely going to be diminishing that down, but I'm still looking at the roughly 3 to 5, somewhere in that area, million miles squared. But part of what I'm going to have to discern and determine when it comes to building out this world is going to be different things along the lines of what are the overall features going to be to this place? What are the overall cities going to export, import? What are going to be their major functions? What are going to be their larger facets? What sorts of creatures are going to inhabit this specific continent? What different aspects of fauna, or not fauna, but flora, will be prevalent here? What will be less prevalent here? And since I have all of these different factors to calculate in, the more I go over it, I've run into areas where I need to determine different aspects for different things. As such, the first thing I wanted to work on in terms of... Well, there goes that one. Darn it. I have lost a pencil lead that I didn't want to lose. And it has fallen into the abyss. And is lost forever. No. But the first thing I wanted to work on was city building. So... Okay, so it can be seen. And we are going to put city in quotations for a reason. And I'm going to slide this light over so that it might be a little bit easier to see what's on the page. And after working with Sam, we managed to break down city building into 4 distinct factors that make up a city or a town or something of that nature. And the first of those is the size of a city. And this is in terms specifically of mass. And with mass, what is the greatest potential? Let me move this camera down a little bit. There we go. What is the greatest potential of space that will be likely for a populace to live in? Now, we're not referring to the populace itself. We are referring to in... flip this paper over. In this space here, how many homes can be built? How many people can live in this area in general? And again, we're just denoting. We're not actually doing a full map or anything. But what can all fit in this one area? sort of thing. So with that, we have broken that down into how many are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 different factors, factors of size. The first of them is a commune, which I'm going to denote with com. A commune is going to have only roughly 5 homes. Doesn't mean it's 5 families, doesn't mean it's 5 individuals, just 5 homes. There won't be anything else to a commune. It is literally just a small grouping of individuals in this area. Or individual homes in this area, not individuals, individual homes in this area. Now, off of a commune, if they were to continue to add 2, eventually that would innately increase to a village. With a village, you are likely to have 8, 9, 10, maybe up to 12 different homes. So we're going to go with 8 to 12 homes. But you may also have something like a general goods sort of shop, or a notable building of sorts. So one note, and we're just going to do note build. So one notable building in that. After the village, you run into the town. Now, towns get a little bit different, because towns, you may still only have the 8 to 12 homes, which could even go up further to maybe 15, 16 homes. So we're going to go 8 to 16 homes. But you're going to have maybe 2, 3 different notable buildings that pop up throughout your town. You may have a tavern. You may have a bank. You may have a general goods store. You may have a mayor's home, or a leader's hut, or whatever it may be. In terms of in general. So we're going to go 2 to 3. Notable buildings. You will likely also have in a town 1 communal building. Now, a communal building may be nothing more than a feast hall for the small town. It may be something like a bathhouse, or something akin to these different factors. Next on the list is one where you can really condense 2 into 1, but it does add for potential when it comes to the type of thing that we're going for. And this is geared around low tech. This is very low tech sort of community. which would be a small town. Or not a small town, but a small city. Now, difference between a town and a city is in terms of overall housing capability. Where a small town will likely have 8 to 16 houses, a small city will likely have double that. You're looking at more like, we'll go 26 to, I'd say probably about 40 homes. Now, again, this is a small town or small city. So these homes are not going to be massively lavish usually. They will probably be something that is more along the lines of multi-story homes. And for the purposes of the game I'm working on, this could even be old abandoned apartment complexes that are housing multiple families, and that apartment complex or hotel just got converted into a home center for the populace that is there now. Now, most likely, stuff like that would be found in larger cities, and in terms of footprint, you're looking at, for all three of these, we're going to go from there to there. You're looking at no larger than potentially the equivalent of about five blocks, maybe. So 5 city blocks, which does vary between cities. It does vary size to size. However, give me a moment and I will actually look up the average. Okay, so the average size to a city block is roughly 100 by 200 meters, or 330 by 660 feet. So in that, you're looking at roughly 500 by 200 meters. Or not 200, but 500 by 1000 or 1,000 meters. So you've got a half a kilometer by a kilometer's worth of space, which isn't bad. In overall acreage, however, what is that? Okay, so these wouldn't even cover more than roughly 2.5 acres of area. Generally speaking, though city blocks differ in size, a typical square block reaches, the typical square city block reaches 16 or 17 per mile. So that's not bad. So you're looking at roughly 5 blocks worth of space for these first ones, which does limit the amount of defendability to some aspects, but it also increases the defendability to other aspects in terms of the low tech. It also allows for you to have different things scattered about in that area that may not be possible with cities in general, such as having farmland where you're actually able to gather for a community. And that's one of the aspects too, how I wanted this to really sit, is this is more community based here. No matter how many people are in that, you have potential for the overall community being able to do things. So a small city is going to be going to be double what a town is going to have in number of homes. A small city would also have probably 5 to 6 different notable locations, maybe even 7 notable locations. You're going to have shops, you're going to have restaurants, you're going to have potentially have government buildings. You are likely to have some sort of policing headquarters in the form of, say, a guardhouse, or potentially something along the lines of a house of medicine, or for terms of D&D, you may even have a city wizard in a small city. So you're looking at about 6 to 7 notable buildings. And you're likely to have potentially 1, 2 communal centers. Now, it could be a communal building. It could be a city fountain of sorts. So you're probably going to have about 2 communal, which, don't mind the spelling. The spelling is likely to be terrible. Welcome to whoever just joined us. We are currently working on going over different aspects of city building for terms of tabletop gaming, which in part is spawning into the world I am currently building, and the what's the term I'm looking for? I have Englished really good all day long. The overall kingdom in which the game is going to be based in. But what we are working on is currently size of cities, the general, what is the size for this town, for this city, in terms of mass. You are going to have different factors. Next on the list is a medium city. And a medium city is going to, at a minimum, house about 50 to likely 90 homes. Now, a city of this size is going to have more distinct buildings. It is the buildings within are going to be much more notable. You are likely to have more shops. You are likely to have trade centers. You are likely to start having distinct regions of town. So overall footprint wise, here you're probably looking at, I would say, roughly knowing that you can fit 16 to 17 blocks in a mile area, I would say that a small city is probably going to be taking up at least a good 10 blocks. Now, that's standard city blocks for modern world. That's so the rough size of an average city block. Where a medium city in terms of mass is probably going to be taking up roughly I'd say probably 1.25 miles. Now, the reason why I say 1.25 miles is something else to think about with each of these is you're going to have different aspects to every city anyway. Some of them are going to have walls. Some of them are going to have farmland on the outside of the city. Some of them are going to cluster homes in the middle. Some of them are going to have the town spread out across the whole of that area rather than it being clustered into one. So these are things to look at and to note when building your city. How much of this city is going to be where? Welcome to whoever is in over on, I don't know if you are on Facebook. I don't know if you are on YouTube. Welcome to whoever just came in over on YouTube. We are currently working on city building, which if you are watching this on Facebook or on YouTube, I am actually going to be doing a video of this. Hopefully I can get the editing to work with me. That's been the delay with the recent video. I still have the video. I still have all of the information. My video editor just keeps crashing every time I go to render video, and I don't know why. But one of the things that we're looking at for building a city is what is the mass of the city? What is the generalized size? What is the potential hold of the city? Not the population they're in, but the potential for as you expand outward. And again, everything is relatively simplified down. And as you go on, you can embellish more. You can take that little bit of information and expand that little bit of information outward. But, so for a medium city, we're looking at 50 to 90 homes, roughly. Notable building-wise, though, you're definitely going to have more notable buildings. You are likely to have churches. You are likely to have different communal buildings that you may not have in a smaller city. Now, again, this is specifically city building for low tech. This is not city building for medium tech or industrialized. This is very heavily geared at low tech. But it also has potential for higher tech as you progress. And most of that is taking out this small portion here and then increasing everything accordingly upward in terms of size, how long it's going to take to get from point A to point B. These are factors that you have to look at when, okay, how am I going to design this town? How am I going to build this specific location? No, I don't want booking.com. And I don't know why it's popping up. All right, so with a medium city, you're potentially going to be looking at, again, 6 to 7, maybe 8 or 9 different notable buildings, but you're going to be looking at larger versions of these buildings. You are going to have a much bigger footprint for these buildings. Now, again, with the diagram that I drew on the back of this, again, it was just a quick sketch. Some of these buildings have the potential to be taller than other buildings. How many of these buildings are stacked buildings? How many of these buildings are literally one building here, one building here, or one building here, one building over here, with an adjoining building atop them that has its own stairwell that goes up, which, see if I can actually draw stairs, but what factors are going to go into that? Because that could change it from being 1.25 miles to still being the rough area of 10 city blocks, which, for those who are interested, is roughly... Okay, so you're looking at approximately 1,000 meters by 2,000 meters. So you're looking at 1 by 2 kilometers. Welcome to everybody coming in. So with the medium city, we are still looking at roughly the same general area, but we're going to increase that from 6 to 7 up to 7 to 9 notable buildings. BUILD, thank you. And again, you're still looking at probably 3-4 communal buildings. 3 to 4 communal. You may also end up having other facets to that city that your smaller city may not have. With a medium city, you may have other aspects that are not a potential for in the smaller cities. So you could end up having something like probably amenities of some sort. That's what I'm going to label it as, is amenities. You may have access to an aqueduct. You may have access to indoor plumbing, which people may not know. The ancient Romans had plumbing in some of their buildings. They had indoor waterways. So this is a potential for your low tech or your no tech, and again, quote no tech sort of worlds. I mainly play survival, so planning is usually just a thought that I have during the day when winging. Honestly, I can't say much. I have a really bad habit of, when I am running tabletop games, a lot of what I'm running is stuff in 5th edition D&D. However, I have run things that are more technologically based and stuff like that. I have realized that a lot of times I don't plan out more than basic facets of what I'm doing. And so I end up with a couple of different, I don't want to say flaws, when uh, when it comes to the worlds I end up running. It ends up being more akin to I will have a generalized idea of this is the town I want to put here. But then I don't ever dig into it. And it wasn't until recently that I started actually digging into the world building aspect. And a big chunk of that is because I am planning on what I am working on being something bigger than just a one-time playthrough or a generalized one-shot sort of game. And so now I've gotten to the point where I do try to plan things out a little bit more. Video game-wise, I love survival games, but I don't have the patience or attention span for survival games all the time. One of the wonderful ups and downsides to having ADHD is I will hyper-focus for a minute, but once I get to a point where I lose enough of an interest in it, or I have to stop because I have to go do something else, I completely forget what it was that I was doing or what it was that I was focused on. And so I end up losing that whole idea stream that was running, which, to be fair, in terms of the art stuff that I do, it comes in handy, because sometimes the art either gets really good or it just never gets touched again and I do something else. But there are times when I'll go back and I'll reacquaint myself with an art piece that I started, and I will have a completely different idea when I come back, but I'm still able to use that basis and go, this looks interesting, this would look better. Which is partially what I did with this earlier on my Twitch stream. When I started working on this, I did the mountains a lot different. Currently, we are working on going over the general basis of how to build cities and build a world for generally tabletop gaming, but part of the biggest portion of what I'm discussing is city building specifically. And again, it's very simplified down to get the basics of building building a city for your tabletop world, for your video game world, whatever it is that you're working on. This is the general points for building out those cities, building out those towns. Up to this point, we have gone over the smaller portions that really only go up to roughly 1.25 miles in overall size. From here, everything gets a lot bigger. Now, again, this is for low tech. For those that have been here for a little bit, this is low tech city building. This isn't modern day city building. Modern day cities, you have cities that are 20 to 30 miles in overall size and bigger. So with that, for game purposes, a lot of times you're not going to be building something in super big scale unless it's for an entire for your party to run through a giant city, such as Cyberpunk, or potentially something along the lines of Assassin's Creed, where you're running through the larger cities of numerous countries. But we'll go with the Ezio trilogy, where in the second game, you are running through Rome. Rome is not a small city. Rome is a very big city. And Rome, the size of Rome and the technological side of Rome would work for a tabletop game. But how do you write out that big city? What sorts of things are going to fit into a mega city of sorts? And that's one of the things that we're going over. I will be doing an actual video of this and posting it on my channel. I will likely start the filming for it tomorrow after I have finished working on my notes for it. And then it's a matter of editing and posting. But where we're at now, we're roughly in the area of a medium-sized city. And by low tech, I'm talking roughly the end of the Dark Ages, right past that. So in a very general area that you would find most D&D campaigns, you're not going to find a lot of different things that that you see in modern cities. You're going to see a lot of stuff that may not fit the general idea of a larger city. So with a medium city, you're looking at roughly 50 to 90 homes, which, if you think about it, that's 50 to 90 families, especially in a low-tech society. And a lot of families, especially during the medieval era, the Renaissance, a lot of these families are 3, 4, 5 children, including parents and potential in-laws. And as time progresses, you never know who else is going to be moving into the home. So these are larger homes, and the populace is likely going to be much higher than what your overall footprint size is, but you do have potential for more. One of the reasons why for this, the generalized size is barely over a mile is in terms of playability over actuality. So for using it in terms of a writing tool, a small city for the world that I'm building for the novel I'm writing. If I'm building a small city, it's not going to be 10 blocks. I'm looking more at 1.25 miles, maybe 2 miles for the entirety of that small city. I'm also looking at a higher population. Or a higher potential for housing a population, a higher potential for notable buildings, such as shops, medical centers, things of that nature. What is the overall footprint going to be based on the level of what is in this world? The technological level of what is in this world. Now, communal buildings are areas where people are likely to gather. People are not generally going to gather at a shop. People are going to gather at a tavern. People are going to gather at a restaurant. People are going to gather at places like a temple, a church. You might have a city hall that they gather at. You may have a feast hall that they gather at. These are fluff for your story. They are not the important note, or they are more of the let's put a pin in this aspect. This will be what we flesh out later on. This is the basis of where I'm at now. And as much as I hate the idea of not fleshing things out, because my brain tries to over process and over analyze the thing that I'm working on, and I doubt you're too dumb to understand it, I'm pretty sure that my way of explaining it is probably overly complicated for no reason, because I have a bad habit of doing that. But my way of looking at things is very over analytical. I want to figure out all of the aspects of this thing as quickly as I can, which is one of the reasons why me and the friend of mine that have been working on this actually started doing this. It was a way for us to break down the basics of what we needed, and then we can incorporate further into it as it goes along. So you're likely going to have these factors for sure in a medium city. After the medium city is a large city, of course, because large is always going to follow medium. And I don't know where that spider came from, but I don't want it on me. And welcome to everybody coming in. We are working on city building currently, or at least the confines of how to build a city. Now, a large city is likely to have a much more substantial footprint. Your large cities are going to have more denoted communal areas, and you are very much so going to have more lavish homes. You are going to have more of an aristocracy that ends up splitting your town or your city. You're going to have the major aspects of most medieval towns that you see in fantasy, where this one section here may, which again we can use this map back here, this section here may be nothing but poor people. People that can barely afford to make ends meet. People that have to leave the city and go out to the outskirts of the city where it may not be safe, and farm out here in fields that have potential to be attacked by wildlife. Or maybe they have to go out here in areas of trees and do forestry work or something along that line. These are going to be the people that are barely going to make it, that are going to live in that area. And then one of these other areas, say this area, is the more aristocratic members of society. And this in the middle is your government building, your overall, this is where I want my mayor or my priest or whatever the entity is that is running this town is going to be here. And then all of these other areas in between are your middle class citizens. These are the citizens that are able to afford to make it, but at the same time, these individuals may have shops, and they are living above their shops, which was not uncommon, and is truthfully still not uncommon in the modern world. It is actually quite common for small business owners to live nearby or in the same building as the business that they run. So your larger cities is where this starts to change up a little bit, because larger cities are again going to take up a much larger footprint as far as overall size. So for large cities, in terms of what I'm talking about for the low tech, I would say you're looking at probably 2.5 to 3.5 miles. Now, in that 2.5 to 3.5 miles, you can fit a whole chunk of homes. So your population could double, potentially even triple from this. So we're going to go at a minimum for a large city. You are looking at roughly 120 to, I would say, probably about 100 or 200 homes in just that area. Hello. Trying to pull an all-nighter, so I'll stay. Truthfully, I can't say I'm really not trying to pull an all-nighter, but welcome to the fun while we're both still awake. With your larger cities, one of the more distinct areas that tend to get overlooked. Oh no, you are perfectly fine. But for terms of this, there are a lot of things that get overlooked when it comes to your larger cities, because not only do you have the impoverished population, you also run into other areas where you have those that are your vagrants, I guess would be the better way to put it. So with that, your generalized population could be quite a bit higher, but it could also end up running very different depending on the world that you're in. It is only midnight for me, guys. But where the notable buildings ends up changing is when you increase the size to this degree, you're also going to be incorporating newer buildings. So, yes, you will have notable buildings. So you will have your generalized aristocracy, the housing for your aristocracies, but you're also going to have more distinct communal buildings. Chances are you may end up having buildings that have absolutely nothing to do with anything in these, but this is going to need. So you may end up having, I'd say, roughly 15 to 18 notable buildings. Let me spell build right, which I can read it, that's good enough. And as far as communal buildings, you're probably still only going to have maybe 3 to 7. You're not going to have a full run of buildings. There's not going to be as many. I mean, unless you live in the southeastern United States, where there's a lot of different buildings that are the exact same thing everywhere in a town. So you could end up with more communal buildings of the same variety, but it's unlikely. But you will also, let me, thank you. But you're also likely to have at least one or two centralized location of your city. And by centralized location, going back to our tiny little reference image, you may end up having, say, your city is a little bit bigger with this as your overall footprint. You may have one city center here, but you may also have another city center here. You'll have a fountain. You may have this as your little market area. And one of the things that larger cities do have is districts. Your centralized areas are always going to be placed in at least one district or another. So we're going to say that larger cities are going to have at least two distinct districts. So dist. All right. Each district is going to be more notable. With games based in a medieval sort of, and I do the quotes for medieval because you can really play to how far you're willing to push that fantasy aspect in your stories with different systems. I know for people that play 5th edition D&D, there is a full area where you go from this very distinct medieval sort of setup to now you can push in technology, and now we're more into the industrialized area, or you can push it even further and get into more of the modern world area, or if you really wanted to push it, you could go even further into the futuristic area where you're getting into potentially both tech and magitech. And as I said earlier, when you start increasing from this low-tech medieval area, then you start getting rid of these, and this becomes your bottom. This becomes your very basis, and the size will always grade up based on the ability to travel from one end to the other end. So the last on the list is going to be megacities. Now, a megacity is not the actual... Nope, C-I-T-Y. Jeez. A megacity is not the actual term that you would likely hear in regards to the modern world. Though, yes, we do have megacities. Especially in the United States, we do have megacities. We also have megacities in Eurasia, and that's across Europe, Asia, some in Africa, some in Australia, some in South America. Megacities have become a commonality in the modern world. Megacities in a low-tech world, not so common. So if you're running a game in a low-tech society, your megacities are going to be minimal. You are going to probably have maybe one. one in your kingdom of sorts, or your overall country that you are playing in. If you are looking at terms of D&D specifically, truthfully, there are two major mega cities in 5th edition D&D, specifically referring to the Sword Coast, which is your main map, your main area of play for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. But on a general basis, you're not going to see a lot of mega cities because, again, we're talking a much larger footprint. We're looking at roughly in the area of 5 to 7 miles worth of city, and that's from end to end. That's not square footage. That's a large end to end, which ends up being a lot different, and I can't remember how to completely do that without exact references, but I believe it would end up being looking at 7. Roughly 49 square miles of space, if I did that correctly. So you're looking at a giant area. So 5 to 7 miles. And I can't remember what that is in kilometers. And the worst part is I can remember it for acreage. That's weird. Or for city block size. So, with a mega city, another area that you're looking at is number of homes. In a mega city, at a minimum, you're doubling the maximum of a large city. You're likely looking at probably, well, not at a minimum. You're looking at about 250 to 300 homes at a minimum into probably about 400 homes, depending on the mega city. So, which in actual terms, it's called a megalopolis. And I didn't know that was a thing until the other day, whenever I looked it up. And I was like, oh, that's what that is. Because I was thinking it was a megatropolis, like the movie that had, the anime that had come out in, I think it was like the mid-90s. There should be a home named after a small cult in a small region that allow for real depth and understanding. And truthfully, for the nation that I am working on, there is a whole plethora of things that play into this world that the greater portion of the kingdom knows about, but stays away from, generally, or doesn't stay away from, and it ends up going poorly for them. But for this, 250 to 400 homes. Now you may be wondering, how do you house that many people in a low-tech society? Most cities that would fall into the category of a mega city, especially in terms of high fantasy or stuff in that area, started out small. And over the course of centuries, built into that major metropolis of a city that you end up seeing in uh, we'll go with something that's distinct fantasy. Lord of the Rings. With no, Rohirrim is no. Wow, I just spaced on Lord of the Rings things. Wow. Big white city with the white tree. Because for some reason, I am drawing a blank on the name of it. And I'll think it'll end up coming to me here in about 2 hours whenever I'm no longer needing the information. But cities like that don't start out that big. They start out small and they continue to progress and grow. As they grow, then you end up with those cities starting to develop different forms of defense, different forms of technology. Now we have a larger population and larger workforce. Now we can start working on other aspects to our town or to our city and continue to progress further and further. But again, we're looking at overall footprint for how far we're going to go with this as we progress. As far as notable buildings go, you are likely going to have an entire district dedicated to certain buildings. You will likely have a market district. You will likely have a housing district. You will likely have a religious district or a government district or maybe a hobo camp. You may have a port district for any cities that fall into areas of a waterway, or potentially have districts that are completely geared in the area that you are looking for. You may have a production district where the entirety of that district is nothing but factories for producing a specific thing or specific things. You could end up being like me and decide that, you know what this medieval city needs? It needs an entertainment district. Because it's a thing. Kinda. But it's a thing. So, yes, you are going to have notable buildings. But those notable buildings are going to vary based on the number of districts. Well, districts. I was a little bit farther up with that pen than I thought I was. But with that, now you end up with a lot more communal shifts. Things change. The bigger the city gets, the more things start to adjust and vary. Now you're looking at roughly a minimum of 4 districts. And of those 4 districts, you are probably going to have different aspects per district. So I'm going to, for my views of it, I'm going to say roughly 20 notable buildings per 15 to 20 notable buildings per district. Now, again, that's shops. That is not your communal gathering areas or your communal gathering buildings. That is very much so just your distinct areas, like your shops, places where people will come to room for the night. So potential taverns, inns, things of that nature. So approximately 15 to 20. And we're going to go NB per district. With that, you are also, with a large city, you are likely to have amenities. an inn might work. But you are also likely to have more amenities and likely to have a notable figure in your megacity. You may have a king, you may have an emperor, you may have that be the seat of your republic, the government basis of your world. That would be your megacities are going to be the areas where you are going to have the most notable individuals at. Once you get past the area of deciding the size, then you come to, which I'm going to bounce this around because population should come first. Then you get to your population. And this is the general population of your area. With population, we broke it down into 4 different potential population areas. The reason for that was because no matter which of these you're in, there is potential for each of these 4, and these 4 also play into what the living conditions are for that town as you get into your living condition. So with the population, the very bottom is low. This means that you have more homes than you have people to fill those homes. Very simple way of looking at it is with a commune, you have 5 homes, but only 2 of them have a family in them. So now you have a very low population area. The next up would be average. Average is you have right at a balanced area of population per homes. Again, looking in the smaller commune, village, and town area, with each of those, we'll go with a town. Say you have 17 homes. Out of those 17, or not 17, you have 14 homes. Out of those 14 homes, 11 of them have families in them. You have room for adding another business, adding a shop, adding a tavern, adding whatever it may be, or even selling to someone moving into the town with these other 2 homes that you have available. Then you have abundant. When it comes to population, the reason we went with abundant was because abundant is literally you have just at, if not right above, where the projected homes to potential population is. I have 40 homes. In those 40 homes, I have 39 families and an individual living in the other one. Yes, that means that the population of that is, if you're looking at general size of family being 4 or 5, that's, once I do the math, because I want to actually have the correct number, you have roughly, give or take, 160 people living in your small city. Okay, that's 160 people that can be building, 160 people for working on walls, working on different things of that nature. Uh, that's also 160 people that could be working on defense, having schools, having things of that nature, which fall into notable buildings. The last of these is going to have to be written smaller, is congested. Now, the reason why we went with congested instead of overpopulated is because technically it's the same thing. When a city is congested, that city has way more people than they can actually house. So you end up with a vast amount of homeless. You end up with a vast amount of potential for illness to become a factor in your cities. Now, again, these are things that are considered fluff. These are flavoring for the story. These are not guaranteed to be needed unless you want it to be a factor in your game or in the story that you're telling. But that, out of these, that is your overall for population, is this segment right there. It low, average, abundant, and congested. Which a lot of mega cities, that's where everybody wants to be. Because that's where everybody wants to be, you, in some of these districts, are congested. But others are very low in population to housing ratio. Others may run in that average area. So your mega cities are going to run a little bit different than your large cities down, but you are still going to run into about the same area whenever it comes to how you decide to write those cities out when you start adding the fluff later on. The next section is the main export. Now, the reason why we added main export as a factor to building a city is because even your smaller areas where you have a village or a town, there is something that you are providing that is keeping these other bigger cities and towns from coming in and wiping you out. Because if you don't have something that they are wanting, chances are they'll just take what you have anyway and overthrow you, and then you just become part of the larger as a whole. And with that, there are a multitude of things that go into the export. But the first that we have on the list is produce. So things that you are going to find in communes, villages, and or in the towns is going to be farmland. You're going to be finding a lot of areas where you have farms that are growing abundant crops. Maybe in your story, some of these farms are not growing abundant crops. Maybe they are positioned in a place where these crops are barely enough to feed them, and because those crops are barely enough to feed them, no one else wants to take that plot of land because that plot of land is useless for farming. It's useless for producing food. But others may have that. And you are still likely to find that with a small city. You're still likely to find that with a medium city. Again, chances are those would likely be things that wrap the outside of the city. These are going to be things that this is the main city. These are the walls around the city, keeping the populace inside safe. Outside of that, there's going to be fence line enclosing the farmland, but the farmland's still going to be there. Now, that produce, again, what type of produce becomes fluff? It is all about narrative at that point. Do we need to know exactly what the export is at this point? No. We just need to know that this town of average or abundant population is their main export is produce. They will have one person monthly take their gathering of food that is more than they need and go and sell it for the town as a whole, or something along those lines. The next is going to be something that you're really only going to find in areas where water is abundant. And by that, I'm not referring to riverways unless you have larger riverways and your town is literally fixed right on the edge of that riverway to where you're able to net a lot better, and that is fishing. There is such thing as a fishing village. Villages that are built for fishing are in areas where fishing is prevalent, where you are able to go and actually gather fish regularly and in a decent enough quantity to be able to keep some, sell the rest. Next, we decided to add this one because to us it really fit a different area of export that we think about in the modern world, but may not have been as big of a thing in the medieval world, and that was ranching. Now, the fishing industry sells fish. The ranching industry sells livestock. And they raise livestock. And that's what they do. That's the whole of what that town is geared around. Now, truthfully, if you have something geared around ranching, that's probably not going to be a small city. There's a very likely possibility that it'll be a village, or it may even be a commune that is geared around that one facet. Anyone from the United States has likely seen the show Yellowstone. If you haven't, it's really not that bad. It's actually a fairly decent show. Not in my top 10, but it's still good enough that I enjoyed watching it. One of the aspects of the Yellowstone Ranch that I found interesting is out of the whole of their property, you had a small area, and I'm going to do it in terms of a box for a reason, where you have the main house here, which in instances of something like that would be your leader. Then you have stables. You have, in those stables, you may have 6, 8, 10 stalls for horses. You have pasture area way out in the back, which again, footprint of land for a village or a town is only the rough area of about 5 city blocks, which is roughly not roughly, it's usually mathed at a kilometer by, or a half a kilometer by a kilometer, where a small city, you may actually be able to work a small city in terms of the size of a kilometer by 2 kilometers, or maybe even further up, depending on, again, level of technology, level of willingness to, how far are they willing to ride, what are they willing to do in order to get there. But you have a stable here. You may have these 3 buildings that are your ranch hands. You may have over here a communal building. So ranch hands, that's your leader. This is your communal building. All of this really does fall into the area of a commune. It really does fall into that area of a gathering of people in one small area. And with most of the quote unquote commune village and town, these are groups of people working together for a common goal on a general basis, which is one of the reasons why we decided, for the purposes of this, to actually incorporate those, especially when you're looking at a Dungeons and Dragons based world. When you're looking at a world that is geared around that low tech or minimal tech sort of aesthetic, you are looking at groups of people working together for a common goal in the smaller towns and regions. Next on the list of exports, though, is your mercantile stuff, or merchantile. I don't remember how it's pronounced or spelled. So we're just going to put merch. Now, merch is traded goods. These are things that are craft goods. Fabric. Pottery. Things of that nature. You are exporting traded goods. Now, most of this may just stay in that town. Maybe the notable buildings are shops specifically for selling their own trade goods. Maybe the shops that they have are specifically selling, this one person produces these goods, and we're going to have this one shop dedicated to that. Or it could be a shop of oddities. That is what falls into your mercantile area, is very distinct trade goods. Next on the list is lumber. Now, if at this point you are realizing that this is kind of following a Hunger Games sort of area with distinct regions based on these distinct productions, there is a reason for that. While we were working on figuring it out, one of the things that we were looking at is the way society was set up in the Hunger Games. Each of them are producing a specific good for the rest of the overall nation. Each district has its own thing. Well, the problem is that in the Hunger Games, each district is its own community that is governed by an overall mega that when writing stories about big areas like this, what is the overall that I'm going to have to focus on with this? What are going to be the states of these people living in these areas, so on. But every city is going to have something that they are going to be able to do better than others. So some of them will likely be lumber. in the I hate going back to medieval era because it's not really medieval era. In a low-tech society, you are likely to find a need for lumber where you're probably not going to need other things that we have now in abundance. So, lumber. And then you have stone. Stone, not always easy to get. Stone tends to be a pain in the butt, but it is